between a lie wrapped in law and silence wrapped in fear. And why? In Burkina Faso, where there hasn't been an election, do people still rise and cheer when their leader walks by? You really want to know? Like this video, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments. Because what comes next will change the way you see elections in Africa forever. On the morning of July 11th, Kenya's president officially approved a new electoral commission. 7 members, sworn in just hours after the court dismissed a legal challenge. The new chairman, Erastus Ethekon, is a human rights lawyer, but Kenyans didn't celebrate. Instead, one question filled the streets and social media: who do they really represent? None were elected by the people. None answer to the people. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, branded undemocratic by the West, ordinary citizens take part in real decision-making. So here's the question that's about to reshape this story. Is democracy just about elections? Or is it about giving people the power to decide their own future? Mary is in her final year studying journalism at a university in Kisumu. She once dreamed of becoming an investigative reporter exposing election fraud, fighting for justice. But now, Mary doesn't vote anymore. Not because she doesn't care, because she doesn't want to die. In Kenya, elections don't just shape politics. They shape survival. They decide who mourns, who runs, who disappears. In 2007, over 1,000 people were killed in post-election violence. In 2013, entire slums were burned down overnight. In 2017, the Supreme Court annulled the results. Voter turnout dropped by half. In 2022, after Ruto claimed victory, 4 electoral commissioners rejected the outcome. They were suspended. Protests erupted. Mary lost her best friend shot while filming police beating civilians on Moi Avenue. On the walls in Mathar, someone spray-painted: "We voted, we died, we learned." That's what elections mean for millions of young Africans. Not hope, a warning. A TikTok comment from Nairobi went viral: "We don't die in war, we die when we vote." And behind that pain is a truth too many fear to say out loud. Elections in Africa have become a ritual, a theater. Lines form, cameras roll, officials speak, but the result always someone already chosen, already approved, already safe. That's why people are now looking elsewhere, to a strange place, a country once mocked, ignored. They're looking at Burkina Faso. In 2022, a 34-year-old soldier named Ibrahim Traoré seized power in a coup. No ballots, no campaign, just a statement enough. He promised elections by July 2024, but in May 2024 he postponed them for 5 years. No opposition parties allowed, no clear path to a civilian vote. And yet, something unexpected happened. People didn't protest. They rallied around him. In Kenya, students march with signs. In Burkina Faso, farmers hang his portrait on village walls. Women dance in markets shouting his name. Thousands of volunteers build schools and roads for free. What's going on? How does a military leader with no election win the hearts of his people, while elected presidents lose them? Because in Kenya, you vote then starve. You vote then run from police. You vote and your president signs another IMF loan. But in Burkina Faso, the gold mines were reclaimed. Foreign corporations were kicked out. Electricity reached rural towns. Teachers got a 10-fold raise. People saw change, felt it, lived it. In Kenya, elections give you speeches. In Burkina Faso, they gave people water, justice, and dignity. One Ghanaian comment summed it up: Traoré isn't democratic, but he hasn't betrayed his people. Even those who criticize him admit he didn't steal, he didn't flee, he didn't sell the country's soul. And maybe that's all people want, not perfection, just someone real. Traoré once said no country has developed under democracy, and maybe for Africa that rings true. Because what good is a vote if it leads to hunger? What good is a ballot box if it protects no one? Mary doesn't worship Traoré. But she said something that stuck with us. I wish Kenya had someone who acts instead of someone who just promises. Maybe the West calls that dangerous. Maybe they say that's undemocratic. But for the millions who've bled after voting, who've buried friends, missed meals, lost hope, Maybe real leadership doesn't always wear a suit, doesn't always follow the script. Maybe it just shows up and builds. Because the real threat is not a coup, not a dictator. It's a generation that's no longer afraid to compare. A generation that has tasted both democracy and deception, that remembers the slogans, but sees the suffering. Young people in Kenya are not lazy. They are not violent. They are not asking for chaos. They are asking for truth. And when they look around, they don't see it in ballot boxes. They see it in communities where people feel safe, in leaders who sleep where soldiers sleep, in decisions made by the people, not for them. That's why the name Traoré keeps showing up. In comments, in memes, in whispers. He's not a messiah, he's not perfect, but he broke the script. And to a generation that's been lied to by every president in a suit that matters, in Burkina Faso, there are no flashy campaigns, no promises written by PR teams. There's just work, progress. And the feeling may be for the first time that power has a face and hands and feet, that it walks beside the people, not above them. So Mary asks again, why should I vote, if nothing ever changes? And that's a question every African country must now answer, not with another commission, not with another televised oath, but with results. Some say democracy is the highest form of civilization, that if we can vote, we can grow. If we can elect leaders, we can build nations. But that belief is fading fast across Africa. In Kenya, President William Ruto was elected through a ballot, yet just months later he suspended 4 electoral commissioners because they questioned his win. The courts defended him, but the people didn't. Ruto is a product of democracy, but he's also a symbol of deep disappointment. Under his watch, taxes soared, IMF loans stacked, police cracked down on protests, media got quieter, young people got angrier. All this under the banner of legitimate power. But legitimate to who? For the struggling mother in Kisumu, the unemployed graduate in Eldoret, the teenager tear-gassed in the street in Africa, democracy has become something else. It's not power for the people, it's a performance. There's a parliament, there's a court, there's free media, there's opposition. But behind the curtains, it's the same names, the same deals, the same betrayal. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, there's no presidential election, no party rivalry, no polished speeches, yet somehow there's more trust. Ibrahim Traoré came to power through a military coup. He suspended party politics, postponed elections, dismissed the Western idea of democracy, and still people followed him, not because they're brainwashed, not because they hate freedom, but because they finally saw a leader who didn't lie. Traoré didn't fly to France to beg for loans. He didn't host flashy press conferences. He just got to work. He nationalized the gold mines, paid domestic debt, built schools and clinics, raised teachers' salaries, pushed out foreign corporations. No votes were cast, but results were delivered. That's what people remember. Because in many African countries today, democracy means waiting. Waiting for politicians to speak. Waiting for justice to come. Waiting for the same old story to end. People are tired. And in that exhaustion, they start asking new questions. What is democracy if it doesn't feed me? What is freedom if I can't speak? What is choice if all the options are rotten? And most of all, why is the West so afraid of leaders who don't fit their model? Burkina Faso isn't perfect. There are flaws, media restrictions, opposition concerns. But even critics admit things are moving. People are building. Dreams are returning. Traoré didn't win an election, but he won something else, a second chance for national dignity, and that's worth more than any ballot box. One Kenyan wrote online, "We have elections. They have outcomes." Because the sad truth is many African democracies have become empty houses, beautiful on the outside, rotten within. And more people are walking away, not because they hate democracy, but because they're done pretending that votes mean progress, that speeches mean service, that suits mean solutions. In Burkina Faso, there are no suits, just rolled up sleeves, no slogans, just bulldozers, no promises, just pavement. Maybe that's why Traoré's face is on village walls. While Kenya's leaders need armed guards to walk down the street, maybe that's why people cheer for someone who broke the rules but delivered what the rule followers never could. In the end, maybe the real vote isn't on paper. Maybe it's the moment people say this man is one of us, and maybe that's the kind of democracy Africa's been waiting for. Not elections, but trust, not ballots, but builders, not rituals, but results. And it makes you wonder, why do leaders with the most votes often inspire the least hope, and why do those with no elections sometimes inspire a movement? It's because people don't just want a choice, they want a future. They don't just want a president, they want someone who protects them, listens, and stays. In Kenya, they keep voting in new faces, only to find the same hands pulling the strings. But in Burkina Faso, for the first time in decades, the strings were cut, yes. Traoré holds power, yes. He suspended elections, but he also suspended excuses. He suspended corruption. He suspended waiting. And that's what hits hardest. Because Africans know how to endure, but they're tired of being told to wait for permission, for funding, for change. They're tired of being told democracy is a long journey while their stomachs are empty and their children can't read. Traoré may not have followed the correct political path, but he walked with the people. And right now, that feels more democratic than anything written on paper. A farmer in Bobo Dioulasso said it best, "I never voted for him. But for the first time, my crops are reaching the market." And that is the kind of result no campaign speech can fake. As 7 new commissioners raised their hands inside Kenya's Supreme Court, TikTok was already making fun of it. Clips of the swearing-in ceremony were edited with clown music, sarcastic captions, and millions of views. One read, "New actors, same play." It wasn't because Kenyans don't care about democracy. It's because they've seen this movie too many times. Every promise becomes a punchline. Every reform ends in regret. One student at the University of Nairobi put it bluntly, "Our parents were fooled by votes. We get beaten by batons." Kenya's Gen Z isn't protesting for the fun of it. They're protesting because they want to live. They want truth. They want dignity. And what are they getting? Tear gas, rubber bullets, police vans, and a president on national TV telling them to stop destroying the country. But ask anyone in the streets and they'll tell you who's really destroying it. Because it's not the protesters, it's the powerful, the ones in suits, the ones who lie, borrow, steal, and still get reelected. And in the middle of this anger, one name keeps coming up again and again, Ibrahim Traoré. Not because he's perfect, not because he's democratic, but because he doesn't pretend. While Kenya is borrowing more from the IMF, Burkina Faso is paying off its national debt without foreign aid. While Kenya is cutting fuel subsidies, Burkina Faso is opening state reserves to protect rural families. While Kenya raises tuition, Traoré builds tuition-free schools funded by gold revenues reclaimed from foreign companies. When Kenya sends in riot police, Traoré sends in construction crews to build classrooms. When Kenya hosts national dialogue for politicians, Traoré hosts local forums with villagers, youth, and elders. The difference isn't the system, it's the honesty. People don't need their leaders to speak English on CNN. They need someone who looks them in the eye and says, "I see you. I won't sell you." That's what Traoré says. And even without an election, people believe him because his words turn into roads, water, jobs, and justice. In Kenya, politics is a private club. The rich switch seats. The poor get silence. But in Burkina Faso, something rare happened. Someone flipped the table. He's not polished. He's not perfect. But he's not fake. And sometimes, that's more than enough. One TikTok live stream from Nairobi said, "They don't have to kill you. They just have to make you quiet." But silence is no longer working. Across Africa, Gen Z is waking up. Uganda, Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana. They're asking the same question, do we need more elections, or do we need new rules? A Senegalese commenter said it best: "I don't need a president with good grammar. I need one who builds schools, protects the poor, and doesn't steal." In Kenya, they have elections. In Burkina Faso, they have results. That's the difference. And people feel it in their bones. This isn't about left or right. This isn't about coups versus constitutions. This is about betrayal. Years of voting, years of waiting, years of nothing. Now, the anger has a shape, a voice, a new dream. Give us a leader who might not follow the script, but finally does the work. That's what people want. Not perfection, not promises, action. They want a leader who doesn't show up just for the cameras, who doesn't vanish after the votes are counted, someone who doesn't smile during hardship and disappear during disaster. In Burkina Faso, people say Traoré walks among them. Not every day, not always, but enough to feel seen. When he visits villages, there are no red carpets, just bare feet, dusty roads, and open ears. A woman from Kudugu once said he came. He didn't speak much, but when he left, our well got fixed. That's the kind of leadership people remember. Not the one that talks, but the one that shows up. Meanwhile, in Kenya, how many politicians know the price of maize today? How many have stepped into a slum without bodyguards? How many still believe that leadership means service? This is why people say we don't want saviors. We don't want saints. We want someone who knows what hunger feels like, who knows the weight of broken promises, who carries our wounds as his own. In a small town near Eldoret, a mural was painted last week. It showed two paths, one lined with posters, microphones, and fancy suits, the other lined with bricks, wheelbarrows, and children smiling at a new school. Underneath, someone wrote, "We've tried the first, let's build the second." That's where Africa stands now. At a crossroads, one road leads back to ballots that do nothing, the other to a new way of leading, a way that may not be clean or perfect, but at least it's real. And in a world drowning in fake, real is revolutionary. As Kenya debated the new electoral commission, a simple message appeared on X-Twitter. It wasn't from a politician. It wasn't from the media. It came from a small group of university students in Burkina Faso. Their words were soft, but powerful. We used to feel hopeless too. We thought we only had two choices: play their game or be crushed. Then we realized something. We can make our own rules. That message crossed borders. It went viral in Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria. Thousands shared it. Millions watched. And something shifted. This wasn't about elections anymore. It became a story about ownership. A story about people who stopped waiting for permission and started building anyway. In Nairobi, 17 students from 4 universities formed something new. The People's Electoral Tribunal. No official title, no donors, no party backing. But they had something else: belief. They launched a website to track corruption in voting, mapped zones of intimidation and vote buying, collected voice notes from everyday citizens, sharing what elections felt like uncensored. They called it the People's Memo. The movement grew. In Nigeria, students at the University of Lagos began hosting open-air forums, breaking down election laws in plain language. In Senegal, YouTubers made a series called Unmasking Democracy, exposing the hidden machinery behind every vote. And at the center of it all, a new idea was forming. Not a protest, not a riot, but a quiet revolution. The African referendum. It wasn't on paper. It wasn't sanctioned. It was in hearts, minds, and conversations. Everyone was asking, do we still believe in this system, or is it time to design our own? From marketplaces to mosques, schoolyards to churches, people were answering. And across it all, one surprising symbol emerged: Burkina Faso. Not because it's rich, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Where leadership means showing up. Where progress isn't a promise, it's a shovel, a school, a dam, a debt repaid. People across Africa began saying they didn't wait for permission. Why should we? They weren't asking for chaos. They were asking for a reset, a chance to lead themselves. And in that moment, Africa remembered something powerful. The ballot isn't the only way to choose. Sometimes you choose with your hands. Sometimes with your back bent under bricks. Sometimes just by refusing to be lied to again. So the real referendum wasn't at the polls. It was happening right now, in the streets, in the silence, in the rising hunger for a different kind of future. One where power comes from the people, not paperwork. One where leaders aren't selected, they're earned. One where trust matters more than titles. And the question remains, are we ready to stop begging for seats and start building our own table? It's not about rejecting elections forever. It's about rethinking who they're really for. Because if the people are just extras in someone else's show, then maybe it's time to cancel the play altogether. In Burkina Faso, no one waited for a donor meeting to dig canals. They grabbed shovels and did it. No one waited for foreign aid to pay teachers. They used the gold under their feet. That spirit, that fire is what's catching on. It's not anti-government. It's not pro-chaos. It's pro-people. One woman from Accra said, for years, I thought voting was power. Now I know organizing is power. Working together is power. That's what this movement is about. Not a flag, not a face, but a feeling that we're not stuck, that we're not small, that we don't need permission to rise. Africa is waking up not with slogans, but with actions. Not waiting for change, but becoming it. And that's a twist no one saw coming. Somewhere in Nairobi, someone spray-painted these words on a cracked white wall. We voted. We died. We learned. Meanwhile, in a dusty village in Burkina Faso, a 12-year-old boy stood outside his new school, raised his fist and shouted, "Long live the people!" 2 places, 2 stories, 1 continent. Africa doesn't need more speeches. It needs leaders who stay when the cameras turn off. Leaders who build even when no one is watching. Leaders who walk with the poor, eat with soldiers, and speak less but mean more. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever lost hope in this thing called democracy, then this story is for you. Like this video. Share it with your brothers and sisters. Subscribe now because we're not just telling stories. We're building a future together. And now, we want to hear from you. Does a vote still matter if it never brings justice? Drop 1 word in the comments, enough.